The exciting world of building procurement. Let's have a look. Good evening, everyone. I'm Florian Heiser with my stein of coffee again and just recovering after essentially hitting send on a deadline. So, big project. I've been killing myself, and so has Rachel for the last week. And all of a sudden, to celebrate, my NBN gets cut off. Apparently they're doing maintenance works until the 22nd of this month, so 6-day window, and it's only meant to be for what, 3 hours, and it's been all day. So it's going to be interesting seeing how I can produce content for you today and for the rest of the week. So, you know, my quality may decrease, as in I may do the dodgiest compression possible just to upload it over my phone. So I thought today we would have a look at building procurement. Now, I've mentioned this a few times before. Now, everyone's talking about certification, registration of professionals, the privatization of certifiers, corruption in local authorities. You know, you look at Martin North and in the interests of the people, they've got some really good talks there, but I haven't really heard anyone talking about, to much extent, about procurement. And I've mentioned that in previous videos, and people have asked, what do I mean by procurement? And I thought tonight we would have a look at just 2 examples and 2 case study documents prepared by the Office of the Victorian Government Architect, the OVGA. Oh, VGA. You know, thumbs up for all the old gamers that appreciate going to 256 graphics. You know, thumbs up. But back to this. So the Office of the Government, or the Office of the Victorian Government Architect, essentially they're a government employee, and their main focus is to represent design or design value or architectural value. I won't go into any great detail because I've worked for the Office of the Government Architect up here, and I found, you know, I guess when you appreciate the bureaucracy of the public service and how much time they spin their wheels and how badly they do things, you can appreciate why they need a professional in there to kind of steer them correctly. And these 2 documents, there's a whole series of them, are prepared by the office for government use. The first one is just talking about procurement case studies, traditional construction only. And I thought we'd go through these case studies, even though they're aimed for government. They're applicable to every type of project, and it's good to give people an understanding of what I actually mean about procurement. Now, we're going to look at just 2 today. We'll look at traditional, the old-fashioned way, and then we'll also look at design and construct. And the reason we're looking at design and construct is because design and construct, let me just zoom in here nicely. Design and construct is what was used on Opal and is what is used more and more common on projects. Okay? It's kind of a finance condition here of projects for design and construct. The Institute of Architects in Melbourne had to get their building built with a design and construct contract because the finance sector, the banks, insisted on it. Okay, so there's a whole lot here to do with this, and it all interweaves to each other, and it has different risks. So everyone get your stein of coffee ready. Cheers, and let's have a look at the traditional construct-only form of procurement. Okay, so traditional building procurement is based upon full lump sum contracts. Under these commonly used forms of contract, the architect is engaged directly by government or the developer to undertake all stages of the design process and act as superintendent in administering the client's separate contract with the builder. Okay, so you've got the client, which is the government. You've got their design champion, and I'm assuming that's the person internal to the government that's, you know, driving the design, or the champion. Makes sense. And they've got the design team here, and there's a contractual relationship between the client, which is the government or the developer, and the design team, which is the architect, the engineers, and all these other people under here. And the client also has a separate contract with the builder, and that's managed by the design team, managed by the architect there. So just have a look at these relationships here, because that's really important. So, action to benefit good design. And this is coming from the Office of the Architect, so their emphasis is on good design. A clear design intent and brief explaining the design philosophy as part of the tender documents will help protect the design quality. Now this means when you're going to tender. Now tender means when you've got all your documents done. All your documents done in this process, your drawings, schedule, specification, all the engineering calculations, double-checked everything. You bind it up into a big document, and then you either invite several builders or you have a public tender where they all, get that, and then they look through it and they put a price in, essentially. And then you compare them, make sure they're all the same, and do an assessment and move forward from there. So here, this is what they're explaining you should have in this document set. A well-defined scope of works and comprehensive documentation. Comprehensive documentation, so very thorough, to minimize variations to the contract price. Okay, now variations, these are, say you've got incomplete information in the documentation and you need to make you need to add addition, or there's something that's going to take extra time. There's a few ones. There's variations that can result from a mistake, from information maybe you didn't get in time, maybe you were getting a particular type of equipment in, and then once you received the information about it after you'd already gone to tender, it was a different size slightly to what you'd allowed for, so you have to massage that. Or it could be a latent condition. Maybe there was something that you couldn't get access to. You couldn't open something up, you couldn't dig underneath a certain thing until you actually went to construction, so you put a block of money aside from there and said, builder, please allow that. But then there's a variation to that, so they go up and down. Sometimes you give money to the builder for a variation, sometimes you take money back. Maybe they find a savings. But the idea with this type of procurement is that you minimize the variation. So you've got solid, thorough documentation so the builder knows exactly what they're doing. Careful selection of the design team to ensure requisite design expertise in addition to capacity and experience. Okay, so you want a good team. Establish appropriate contingencies. So even when you have a contract price on a project, you need to have a contingency sum. And that's an additional bucket of money that isn't part of the contract. It may be allowed for your budget, but it's an additional bucket of money you would need for unexpected things. Because remember, these buildings are not like mass-produced vehicles. Even the mass-produced buildings are not mass-produced. As in, well, they are, but they don't get the same benefits from a factory production as a vehicle does. So they're one-off art pieces in a way. And I know that's going to sound airy-fairy, but they're unique to the site. They're a unique combination of skills. They're a unique place and time. So they can be unique complexities, and unknown circumstances happen. You need some money in the kitty for it. So engage design advice from the architect to assist with design quality management in brief and contractual development. Okay, well, it's architectural spin, but they want to put the architect forward, because often this doesn't happen. Remember, this is for government. This is telling government employees what to do, and some of them aren't doing this. The client understands the impartial role of the architect and their expert advice independent of the builder. Now, this is very important. Impartial role of the architect and their expert advice independent of the builder. Okay, so the architect here is independent of the builder. We manage the contract, this relationship here. We act as the superintendent and manage it, make judgment calls on it, on that relationship, but it's independent from the builder. Okay, so I'll highlight that again because that's really one of the most important things out of all of this procurement stuff we're talking about. Ensure the provision for independent design advice at key project milestones. This may include advice from a design quality team or design review at the end of schematic design or design development. That's more, well, just to do their thorough documentation and due diligence in the government, which is tough when they have to get stuff out really, really quick. I know we had a job out at Ipswich little police station and it had to get built by a certain time frame to meet an election promise. It happened, but it was sitting there empty. The politicians didn't care. So this is the traditional procurement process. So the architect is independent of the builder. There's a contractual relationship between the client and the builder, and you want thorough documentation to minimize variation, get a decent contract price, and have a good progress, good team. You can see here, you've got the builder, and under them, they've got their subbies, their subcontractors. Now, a subcontractor is, maybe they have their own architectural expertise for particular things. Maybe they could be other consultants, over here. Or it would be, a Sparky. It would be a sign manufacturer. It would be a carpenter, a gyppy, a concrete supplier. All the tradespeople. That's what the subcontractors are underneath the builder. They work under there. Often you'll hear where builders go under, it's all the subbies that don't get paid. One thing that is what you try to do, to the best of your abilities as the superintendent administering a contract like this, when the builder every month, they'll send you a little claim for dollar signs. They'll ask you for money. And you have to go and assess that the claims that they've put forward to you are, they're not asking for too much money. They're not asking for more money than work has been completed, because the concern is, what if they're asking for 10% more just to bank it up or to spend that on another job that they're running in trouble at? You don't want the builder to use up all their money and still have 20% of the work to do. So you need to assess that. And you also want to make sure that he has paid his subcontractors, because often the scary thing is when the subbies, and I've been a subby, when they won't get paid for like 90 days for 120 days, and the builder's getting paid all the time, every month, on the dot. So you want to make sure, and often you'll get stat decks signed, but it's come out in recent court cases where, the director signed a stat deck and it meant absolutely nothing. A stat deck saying that they'd paid all the subbies. And the judge said, no, well, it's unreasonable to expect you to be over all operations of your business. So I don't know why they didn't go him as in breach of the Oaths Act. But there you go. They're not really worth the paper they're printed on, sadly. But that's the thing there, is making sure the subbies are paid. So a bit of a tangent there, but that's traditional construction, and that's what you'd use traditionally on all projects, really, or projects of a certain value, where you wanted to ensure design quality, where you wanted to have a decent contract price, minimize the variations, but you had to do it properly. You couldn't cut corners. It took time. There were steps to go through the process. So, another type of procurement is design and construct. So, I'm going to have a coffee. Now, I'm emphasizing this because it's a very common form of procurement with a lot of projects, and there are some issues involved in it. Oh, hang on, wait, we'll go back here. Okay, we've got a case study here of the school. So we'll go through the summary of each one, and then we'll look at the case studies. So, the procurement method of design and construction is where the client enters into a single contract with a construction company that provides both the design and construction. Okay, they're providing both design and construction. The design services are often subcontracted to a team of designers dependent on the requirements of the tender. So you've got, over here you had the design team over here with a relationship to the client. Now you've got the design team down here with a relationship to the builder. The client tenders a project brief, and each tenderer prepares a preliminary design and basic indication of the time and cost needed to complete the project. Often, and this is just from my own experience, often you'll be expected as an architect to do that design for free as part of a tender team. Put a design together in for free just to get a chance to win the job. And sometimes you do that. You do favors for people, but it can get tough if you have 6 months of them and the builder you're working with doesn't win any of them. Or we had a job where they didn't get the tender in. We spent hours. I had like 6 people working on this tender submission for Indigenous housing. They didn't get in on time. That made you really happy. So the contractor builder engages their preferred design team to undertake the design work and tenders a price for delivery of that design and its construction costs. So the builder, the client is engaged with the builder. So here's the client. They've got a relationship with the builder. They don't actually have a relationship with the design team at all. The design team, I would say, no, they're treated more like a subcontractor. They're not up here. They're down here. Okay, no matter what you think. This was written by architects, so. When all tenderers have been received, the client or client's representative and the client's quantity surveyor will review and select a proposal best suited to the client's requirements. Some developers will use a QS, all smart ones will. A guaranteed maximum price is negotiated between the contractor and the client based on the client's brief. Okay, guaranteed maximum price. So just remember that. If you've got a fixed maximum that you can go to, if the builder finds savings, who's going to get those savings? In our other example here, where you had, this type of relationship, and I'll tidy this up a bit more. We had this type of relationship. Say the builder says, "Oh, Florian, I found this great product that can give, do everything you want and is 10% cheaper." Or, "I've got a supplier willing to offer me this equivalent product here." You make sure it's equivalent. You get all the reports and the proper information. And, I can get it faster. It'll save me time here. Can we use it? Okay, fantastic. Saves time, saves money. There's a variation in favor of your client. Tick. What about here? What about here? Will the builder even tell them? Will they even report it? Sometimes. Sometimes not. Anyway, they'll get you as your subby to tick off on it, and they won't mention anything about the price to the client, or they'll just not even get the subby to look at it. So, a single contractor is then appointed to manage the design, documentation, and construction of the project. Essentially, it represents a package deal. Sounds good. This type of procurement allows a degree of innovation on aspects of the projects that are not fixed. The design team is appointed and contracted directly to the contractor from the start of the project. So you're working for the builder. You're not working for the end client or the end user even. So, action to benefit good design. Let's see what they're saying here. Support the client in seeking independent design advice. They're pushing themselves to ensure that the ambition of design quality and performance criteria are embedded within the brief. So they need to have thorough briefing. Can you imagine developers doing that to any great detail? Support the ability of the design team to deal directly with the client and associated users. Okay, that's like having your cake and eating it too. It sounds good. It sounds good. But when, as a designer working here, he's my client. The builder is my client. I've got to represent his interests, not his interests as much. If he gives me a direction, I can't do it. It has to go through the builder. If the direction that they want to do, breaches their contract, I need, can't happen. So it's to do with the flow of communication. So here, I see this all the time, this type of crap. I mean, particularly from older architects, more old-fashioned architects, and architects that have got well-established practices, or, when you get to OVG or government architect, you've gone through the ringer for a while. And they don't realize that, you've got to keep the builder happy because they're your next source of work, or you got $500,000 worth of work lined up with them. So it's quite difficult. So often, and it depends on who the builder is, they may not even want you to talk to the client. They'll want to manage it for you, which in some circumstances can be really good because you can get some annoying clients. So this isn't necessarily bad all the time. I'm not saying that at all, but it has the potential for a lot of risk, a lot of corner cutting, and not supervision. Not like the other example. So seek independent design review at key project milestones, e.g. brief, schematic design development. So what they're suggesting here is they want you, the client, to engage another architect to review the design at every stage. So it's an additional cost. Do you think that happens? Support the contractor in selecting high quality design consultants, e.g. facilitate an expression of interest. Okay, I mean, yeah, good. That's another pipe dream. How many times have I been approached by builders that have been going D&C and wanted me to just compete? And what were we? A tiny firm of 5 people, and we won jobs away from some of the biggest firms in the city. Seek additional contractual incentives to encourage whole of life and ESD performance. Okay. Include non-negotiable deliverables in the brief to ensure quality and delivery of key design features that have been signed off by stakeholders. Now, this is interesting because in the other one, in the traditional one, nothing is negotiable. If there's a change to the deliverables, then the contract sum changes. So if they remove a whole portion, or substitute something without approval, you get them to tear it up and replace it. Or you can, get a monetary return from, but often you want them to tear it up and replace it, particularly with all the dodgy materials that we've got issues with. So, not recommended if the project is of special design interest, or if there's uncertainty in the brief or the desired outcomes of the client. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. You want it for maybe a luxury apartment tower on a reclaimed site. Would you think that's a special project? Would you? Require the completion of a design intent document before finalizing the contract and ensuring independent assessment of its achievements and associated rewards and penalties. I don't think I've ever seen a design intent document. Oh, yeah, I guess I have. I've seen some briefs and things, but the problem is all these people don't do it. So let's have a look at just two comparisons here. Here the example is for traditional procurement. I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place. I need to make sure it still fits on my screen, guys. So this is a school project, case study, Susan Corey High School, Werribee. Susan Corey High School is a proposed purpose-built co-education, selected entry high school for a maximum of 800 students. Key design adopted the projects. Okay, so aspirational brief. So what worked well? Collaboration between the architects, PCG, and a smooth transition to the new principal. Adequate budgeting, deliver project landscape works. So yeah, I mean, a school, it's a complicated project. There actually is a lot going in there. The cost of the project, $22 million. So there you go. There's a example of it. Now let's look at what an example for a design and construct project is. A bypass. Infrastructure. Cost of the project, $27 million. So a little bit different. A concise brief by Vic Rhodes as the client with a clear design aspiration for the project. So this is where, when I say there are issues with procurement, I'm concerned with the significant use of design and construct for projects that is not suited for, because it gives, apparently, you know, the developers, the clients, and the banks prefer its reduced level of risk, but it means the original people who were, you know, the police, the certifiers, the architects, all of that, who were here checking the builder, are now all working for the builder. Even the certifiers, privatized. It's been privatized. So yeah, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a rundown just of these two strategies, and I'll go into more into greater detail. But really, this just shows you the issue with these two different ways of procuring buildings. And I know this is targeted from a government perspective, but it can go over to developers and, you know, normal private sector. And if you talk, you talk to anyone in the game, it can be tough working in this environment. It can work really well. It can work really well depending on the project, but you can often be asked to compromise. You have to learn to say no, and you have to learn to risk losing work, which can be tough, which can be really tough. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining me for this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. Ding the bell to see my daily updates, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye for now.